Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Shedman Read. Today I'm back with yet another video. I'll be doing the books that I read for the month of January. This video is kind of late a little bit, but better late than never, so let's just get right into it. So first and foremost, some stats, and that's just really one stat, and that is the number of books that I read for the month of January, and that is 26 books. Honestly, I am as shocked as you are because okay, so I'm not that shocked because there's two reasons why I know that I managed to read 26 books. One is I did the 24 and 48 hour readathon, which I did a whole reading vlog on it, so I will link that above in case you want to check that out. But during that weekend, I read 6 books, so that really amped up my number. And the other reason is that I did so many series reads this month. So I basically finished a ton of trilogies, ton of like 5-book series, etc, etc. I also reread the Mortal Instruments series, and that was really fast. I did an audiobook. So those are two reasons why I think my number was so high this month. But as always, I'm not going to talk about all 26 books I read this month. Can you imagine how long this video will be? So I will link my monthly summary down below in case you want to check out some more information on the books that I read, books I reviewed, etc, etc. That will be down below. So I'm not going to go in any particular order, but the first book that I want to share is Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. So I'm just going to talk about the series super quickly because I'm sure most of you guys already know what the series is about, but there's a lot of fantasy, a lot of dragons, love the dragon part, mystery, some romance-ish, kind of, not really, a lot of betrayal, deception, mystery, did I say that already? Action, adventure, just so much stuff going on. I don't really want to talk about it because one, I don't think I can do a really good job in discussing what the book's about, what the series is about, and two, it's just super complicated. I think I'm going to spend forever talking about it and trying to describe it, and I will just not do a good job. So anyways, that's kind of what the book is about. So I just want to talk about this book super quickly because there's really not much for me to go upon except for the fact that this is a 5-star read and I loved it so much. I kind of did a reading vlog on it, so I'll link that above because I read it during the biannual bibliothon, so I did a vlog on that specifically. So the only thing I want to say is that I am so glad I watched the series prior to reading this book because this book is actually written in multiple POVs, and watching the series allowed me to kind of picture everyone very clearly as well as picture what's going on because it kind of jumps back and forth. In the series it worked really well, but in the book it can be a little disorienting, for me at least, because I don't really read that many books with so many POVs. It's just usually like, you know, maybe 2 or 3, etc, and that's it. This one had the entire Stark family basically, so a lot of POVs. So that's the one thing that I would definitely recommend if you struggle with multiple POVs as I do, because this one had a lot. So that's all I really want to say about this book because this book is amazing. I gave it 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. There's not much more to add for me, so yeah. The next book I want to share is That Night by Amy Giles. So this book is about the fact that a year prior there was a shooting at the local movie theater which basically changed Jess and Lucas's life forever. And this book really focuses on the aftermath. It's set a year after the shooting happened, and it just discusses about how these two families' lives have changed so much. And not just the fact that they've changed so much, but the fact that they've changed so differently. On one hand, we have Lucas, who is basically living with his overly protective parents, specifically his mom, and just trying to find sense in the world because he believes that the world took the wrong brother. And then on the other hand, we have Jess, who's basically living with her very, very depressed mother and just struggling to make ends meet. And one day their lives cross paths after finding the same part-time job, and then things just happen from there. And this book was so good. I gave it 5 stars because it was so emotional. The book was just so beautifully written and it just gave me so many heart-wrenching emotions, to be honest. This is definitely a book that I would consider gave you the biggest gut punch, but at the same time somehow ended the book in such a hopeful note that you just can't help but feel hopeful about the world in general after that. So simply put, this book gave me so many feelings, which is so rare for me to say because I'm not that type of person. I'm not an emotional reader. That's not what I am. So for me to say that this book gave me so many emotions is super rare, and kudos to the author who did that. One thing that I loved about this book is how both of their lives were so different and how it was portrayed. I mean, for example, we have Lucas's parents, especially his mom, who is so overprotective to the point that it's actually detrimental, I think, for his own personal growth. And then on the other hand, we have Jessica, who is basically just struggling to make ends meet, like in terms of her finances, her living situation, food, like the basic needs of anyone is basically forced upon her because her mother is too depressed. So I just really liked how the author depicted both families and just described how different both families reacted after a shared incident. Another thing that I really liked is how the author didn't make the shooting as the main focal point, but instead made it as a background. So because of that, it actually made the aftermath of how both families faced and what they reacted and how they're feeling, etc., much more profound and much more impactful, I think. And of course, there's romance in this book, which I actually thought the author did such a good job. There's no incel love here at all, which I really appreciate. And I just really enjoyed how it was portrayed in terms of how both characters, Jess and Lucas, really needed their own personal space to just grieve and just kind of figure out and move forward. And then somehow during that journey to move forward, they end up finding solace with each other, which I thought was really well portrayed. And the romance just seemed so realistic and not at all like an insta love, but it actually stemmed from something more profound and deep, which I really liked. So overall, I give this book 5 stars. It was so good. Definitely recommend it if you have not picked this up yet. The next book that I want to discuss is Dragon Pearl by Yoon Ha Lee. So this book is a blend of Korean mythology and sci-fi. It follows Min's family, which is a family of fox spirits. And Min's mother has basically forbid anyone to really use any of the fox spirits magic, such as shape-shifting and charm. And with all of these restrictions in her home life, Min really longs to just escape her home planet, join her brother in the space forces, and just kind of explore the 1,000 worlds. And then one day someone arrives to inform them that Min's brother Jun has basically deserted the space forces in search of this mysterious object, the Dragon Pearl. And then because of that, Min decides to escape to figure out what really happened and clear her brother's name. So that's kind of what the story is about. I really liked it. I gave it 4 stars. It was such an enjoyable read. I really liked the blend between Korean mythology and like a space opera. Totally on a tangent, but the one thing that I kept thinking about while reading this book is this K-drama that came out, I want to say 10 years ago now. It's called My Girlfriend is a Gumiho, which means my girlfriend is a nine-tailed fox. And the reason why I was thinking about this is because Min is a fox spirit, which means like she's a Gumiho in Korean mythology, and there's, you know, a connection there going on. So I just really like the series, and now I'm just waiting about watching it again because it was such a good series. Anyways, tangent done. One thing that I do want to point out is the fact that this is the first time that I read about a non-binary character that's actually kind of an important person in the story in general, which I was like, kudos to diversity. I also really like the whole plot and the characters pretty much equally, I would say. I love reading about all the adventure and obstacles that Min had to go through just to figure out what happened to her brother, and then figure out what really happened to him in terms of like where is he now, etc. And Min was just so relentless and brave throughout the entire time trying to find her brother that you really can't help but admire her, especially when you consider the fact that she's only like 12 or 13, basically a middle grade. This is a middle grade book, by the way, so she is between 12 to 14, I want to say. So when you consider that and all the things that she did in this book, I was like, wow, I admire you a lot. Another thing that I found really fascinating is actually the concept of the Dragon Pearl. I'm not going to go into it because I don't want to spoil anything, but I low-key wish we had that in real life because that would be amazing and that would solve so many of our problems. So kind of wish we had that. One thing I don't want to forget to mention is the side characters. I really like the side characters, specifically Sujin and Hanyul. I love the friendship that they formed with Min and how that came to be, as well as kind of learning about their own unique abilities, because Sujin is a goblin and Hanyul is a dragon, and it was just really interesting for me to see a bunch of these mythical creatures, and it was just so fun to read, to be honest. So at the end of the day, I really enjoyed this book. If you're looking for a sci-fi novel with great creative mythology such as dragons, tigers, goblins, fox spirits, etc., then I definitely recommend this one. This one's so good. The next books that I want to talk about is the Grisha trilogy. So we have Ruin and Rising, Siege and Storm, and Shadow and Bone, and let's talk about these books. Okay, where do I even start? Let's start with the synopsis. So this is set in the Grisha universe. It follows a girl called Lena, who's basically ordinary or pretty ordinary, until one day while trying to save her best friend, she unleashes this dormant power of hers. And this power is basically the key to saving her country, which has basically been ravaged by war. And now she's essentially forced to go to the castle and train with all the other Grishas under the Darkling. So that's a very general synopsis in terms of what the series is about, and yeah, let's talk about what I thought about this book. This is definitely a series where it got better as the books continued, because the first book I was very much like, I don't know how I feel about this book, because Alina was, ugh. Thankfully though, the last book redeemed itself and I really enjoyed it. It was definitely my favorite out of the entire 3. But my biggest problem, or one of my biggest problem, other than Alina, is the world building. I was really confused with what was going on. There was very much a lack of world building in the first book. I felt that there were a lot of things that were going on, especially all the Grishas, that were not fully explained to me. And so you're just thrust into this world that you don't really know all the powers, the differences, etc. And so I definitely think there was a lack of world building in the beginning of the first book. Then of course the other main issue I had with this book was Alina. She was by far not the greatest character, specifically a main character. I just didn't like her. It definitely took me until the end of the series to kind of appreciate her a little bit more. My biggest issue with her was the fact that I just found her so insecure and very annoying in general. There were just so many times in the book where she just simply felt invalidated due to the fact that she wasn't as pretty as the other Grishas. So a lot of times she would actually refuse to believe what they were saying to her because of the fact that she was not pretty. She would literally be like, oh, I'm not pretty like them. And I'm like, so does beauty signify power? Is that what it is? Because if that's the case, I don't know how I feel about that. And this was especially prominent in the first book because she literally kept repeating herself over and over again that because she wasn't pretty, there's no way that she would have this power. So that was super annoying in the first book. The series also had a lack of diversity in it, and what diversity they did had was very stereotypical, and I'm talking about Karate Kid, kind of stereotypical, so anyways. But at the end of the day though, I still gave the whole series 4 stars because of 2 reasons. And both reasons actually consist of side characters. The first one is Mal and Nikolai. I really liked reading about the 2 of them. I thought they were really fascinating to read about, specifically Nikolai, because his character definitely had the most depth to it, which I really enjoyed, and I'm so glad that King of Scars just focuses on him. And Mal is definitely someone that I can admire just because he is so steadfast to Alina, so definitely appreciate that. But at the same time, why Alina? And the second reason is that I really like Zoya and Genya. I really like the banter between the 2 of them, and I love reading about Genya's history in terms of why she made the choices that she did. So yes, there were definitely some faults in this series. I definitely agree on a lot of them, to be honest, but at the same time there were definitely some redeeming qualities to it, and I'm just glad that I finished it because, you know, now I can finally move forward to King of Scars, so really excited for that. I also talked about this series a little bit more in my 24 and 48 hour reading vlog, so I'll link that above in case you want to check out some more of my thoughts while reading the series. The next book I want to talk about is 9 Perfect Strangers by Liane Moriarty. So this book follows 9 strangers, obviously, as the title states, that goes to this health resort for various reasons. And this health resort is supposed to change your life in the next 10 days. And the book primarily follows this Frances, who is a romance writer, as she navigates her way through the health resort, interacting with the other guests as well as the strange owner. So this book definitely started off really strong. I was immediately sucked into the story and the characters, and I just wanted to know what was going on. But then halfway through or so, the book started to get kind of weird and I didn't really know what was going on anymore, so I ended up giving the book 3.5 stars. And I just went on a super odd tangent. It was as if the book just fell off the bandwagon. And I don't want to go into it because spoilers, but there were definitely some really strange elements in the second half of the book, so I'm a little confused about that. And one thing that I do want to point out is the fact that this book is told in multiple POVs. It follows all 9 of the guests as well as the owner herself, and sometimes other POVs as well. So it's a little bit hard to follow in some ways because it definitely took me some time to kind of understand and finally figure out who was who, because there are just so many of them, especially in the beginning of the book. So that's one thing I definitely want to point out. So at the end of the day, this book started off really strong, got kind of weird in the middle, went downhill from there. So I'm just still really confused with what really happened in this book, so that's kind of how I felt about this book. The next book I want to talk about is White Stag by Cara Barbieri. Hoping I pronounced that name correctly. So this book is all about goblins. Years ago, Janique was taken and captured by these goblins and was basically tortured by Soren's uncle. And at this point in time, it's been about 100 years since she's been captured, and she has managed to stay alive due to her tenacity. And then one day, the Goblin King passes away and the hunt begins, and basically whoever hunts down the White Stag becomes the next Goblin King. And Soren, who is at this point in time basically her master, sees this as a chance for her to fully embrace the permafrost, which is where the goblins live. And as the book continues, she just really needs to figure out what the right choice is. I really like this book. I gave it 4 stars, but there are definitely some trigger warnings, specifically rape and violence, so very heavily on the rape actually. But that's definitely some trigger warnings for you guys out there. So I think the main reason why I like the book so much is because for whatever reason, I didn't go into it expecting that much from it. And so when I finished it, I was very pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed this book. Soren and Seppo were 2 characters I absolutely adored. I love them so much. I love their banter, their dynamic, especially with Janique herself and all that relationship. It was just so adorable. I also really love reading about Janique, who is the main character. I just really like reading about how much she grew throughout the book. book. She definitely had a lot of internal struggles, specifically whether or not she wants to stay human or turn into a goblin, aka a monster. And I think that struggle was actually really well portrayed, and I also like the fact how she had to figure out a lot of times between choosing to do the right thing versus trying to stay alive, which a lot of times were at opposite ends of each other. So at the end of the day, I really enjoyed the book. I definitely can't wait into book 2 just so I can read more about Soren and Seppo. I mean, Soren specifically was, I loved him so much. Seppo was just a riot as well, and of course read about Shanique as well, so really enjoyed the book in general. The next series I want to talk about is A Darker Shade of Magic trilogy by V.E. Schwab. I have Conjuring of Light, then I have A Gathering of Shadows, and of course A Darker Shade of Magic. So this series basically follows Kel, who's one of the last Antari, which basically means he's one of the few who can travel between worlds. And in this book there are 4 worlds. One is red, where magic is thriving. One is white, where magic is slowly dying out. Then there's gray, which is our world, where there's no magic. And then there's finally the black world, which basically meant that magic overtook them and they no longer exist. And Kel is basically the ambassador. He travels between the worlds to provide information and just news in general. One day, for whatever reason, he escapes into the gray world and meets Delilah, and things just happen from there. So I actually did an entire reading vlog on it in case you want to check that out, because I talked about all of my experiences and my reactions while reading the series. So in short, the first book was definitely by far the most lackluster book in the entire series. It started off really strong. I got immediately sucked into the characters, the world building, the magic system, all that stuff, but then halfway through things went downhill from there and I just couldn't find any sort of interest in the rest of the plot. And then in book 2 it was pretty much the opposite. The first half of the book was so slow, I was very bored by it, and then second half hit and that's when things started to happen, and thankfully the third book was by far the best book. So overall, at the end of the day, I gave the series 4 stars just because I believe I gave the first book 3, the second one 4, and the last one 5 stars, so average was 4 stars. And there are 2 characters I do want to mention very briefly about. The first one is Delilah. I think the author tried to make her out to be this amazing character, but I was really disappointed by her. She was definitely the worst character for me, at least. I just didn't have any interest in her character development. I didn't have any interest in how she was changing. I didn't like anything about her in general, actually, to be honest. And the second character I really want to mention is Holland. He's definitely the character that changed so much from the beginning to the end. The beginning I really despised him. At the end I loved him so much. Like, he did a 180 on me, so really happy about him. So yeah, I'm not gonna go too much into detail about this series because I literally did an entire reading vlog documenting my entire experience while reading the books, so I'll link that above in case you want to check that out for more of my reactions and thoughts about the series in general. Then the last and final book that I want to talk in this video is Match Me If You Can by Tiana Smith. So this book follows Mia, and her best friend Robin has a matchmaking service and is basically known for it. And for whatever reason, Robin refuses to set Mia up with her dream guy, Vince, so she decides to take matters to her own hands. What she doesn't count on though is the fact that Logan starts to like her. And so now she has to figure out and juggle these 2 guys and find out which one is right for her. This was probably the most adorable book that I read. I rated this 4 stars. I literally read this entire book in one sitting because it was so good. I was just like, I wanted to know what was going to happen. I love Logan. I love reading about all the things that he did and all the effort that he put in to win Mia over. But I think the best part for me, at least, was how relatable the book was. I mean, end of the day, it's definitely a fluffy novel, but I think the author did a really good job with balancing all the other aspects of life, such as journalism, aka your career, your school, your parents, your friendship, and of course romance, that end up being really relatable to a normal person. I also really enjoyed reading about the friendship that Mia and Robin had and thought that was really well portrayed. And at the end of the day, I cannot believe that this is actually a debut novel, so I'm just really excited to see what Tiana Smith has in store for us next. But anyways, those are all the books I want to mention in this video. Let me know down below if you have read any of the books I mentioned here. If you like them, if you didn't like them, let me know down below. Or if there are any books on here that you want to read but haven't read, let me know down below. But as always, if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe down below, don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!